So, our project is basically the explanation of nuclear power and the appliances it has, such as military. Also, the history of nuclear power, where are the nuclear plants in our country, and how does it work, and the risk it has when we produce it. So, we are going to start this video with a question. Why hasn't it been possible to contain the nuclear energy and substances generated by the nuclear reactor's explosion in Chernobyl in 1986? Well, because when the reactor imploded, many debris, which for the record, debris means sand, cement, sealing, material, among others, along with the remnant of the nuclear fuel used in the reactor, melt together and create the elephant foot. This mass of about a diameter is extremely radioactive, and after only 300 seconds of being in its presence, you had 2 days to live. This made it very hard to contain or even study the insides of the reactor, because the enormous amount of radiation will fry the circuits of any camera sent in. But why does nuclear energy is so dangerous? Well, because when it enters in touch with any type of organic matter such as humans, it mutates your cells, causing you cancer. Also makes your blood cells start getting destroyed, so you get damage at your primary organs and your blood, causing you death. But now, going back to math topics, why is it said that nuclear reaction generates an exponential growth of the atom? Well, because in the sun, when hydrogen atoms are smashed together, they join to create helium atom, releasing enormous amounts of energy in the process. The transformation from smaller hydrogen atoms to bigger helium atoms may be what this question is referring. And just in case that you're wondering, when will all the nuclear energy and substances released by the explosion be dissolved? Can they be cleaned out completely? Well, sadly, it is estimated that the area will not be habitable for humans for another 20,000 years, and a few thousand more to every single residue to disappear. So now we are going to explain the concept of exponential growth, the equation that represents it, and the main characteristics of its basic graph, using a chain reaction as an example. So, it is basically a normal chain reaction when a single accelerated neutron strikes at the atom of your item to begin the reaction. When that is done, 3 other more neutrons are liberated and do the same thing that the first neutron did, making this reaction formula y equals 3 to the power of x. The graph will have as a domain negative infinite to positive infinite, and range from 0 to positive infinite, or y is greater than 0, and the asymptote is y equals 0.
The Black Death is a case of exponential growth due to it being a pandemic. A pandemic is an outbreak of a certain disease, which in this case was the plague disease, caused by a pathogen called Yersinia pestis bacterium. It is thought to have originated in Central Asia and most likely carried through the Silk Road by Oriental rat fleas, which lived on the black rats that were regular passengers of merchant ships. This led to it spreading throughout all of Europe, resulting in the wipeout of 30 to 60% of its entire population. This is an example of exponential growth because deaths were increasing due to more people having it, which meant that more people were spreading it. It started really slow, then it was spreading and killing exponentially fast, as you can see in the graph shown, which shows the total amount of deaths in Europe during 1665.
Exponential decay. A lot of real-life phenomena can be explained with functions that describe how things grow or decay as time passes. Exponential decay explains how some things get smaller exponentially. The rate of change also becomes slower as time passes. Since this rate of change is not constant, the function wouldn't be a straight line across a graph. An example of this mathematical change would be the study of radioactivity. In radioactive decay, there's a concept called half-life. Half-life means that if, for example, you have 100 pounds of plutonium-239 that has a half-life of 24,110 years, in the same amount of years you will still have 50 pounds left, and in another amount of years you will still have 25 pounds left. Plutonium is used in nuclear weapons, nuclear submarines, etc., and is such a big concern when, for example, nuclear submarines sink, because eventually the salt in the water will leak through the steel and release the plutonium, which is quite lethal. There are currently 8 nuclear submarines on the ocean floors.
So now we are going to proceed to answer some questions. For example, what is exponential growth? Growth whose rate becomes even more rapid in proportion to the growing total number of. What is the function and graph that models and represents it? Well, the function is y equals a times b to the power of x. What is an exponential decay? A quantity is subject to exponential decay if it decreases at a rate proportional to its current value. What are the implications of using nuclear energy? The risk of accidents occurring, producing a lot of energy and not as much contaminating as in other forms of energy, cost increase in the production of energy, etc. Do we consider nuclear energy to be clean energy? Yes, because it pollutes a lot less and produces a lot more energy than other forms of it. The only downside is that it's very costly and dangerous. Are we aware that there is a nuclear energy plant in Mexico? Yes, it is at Alto Lucero de Gutiérrez Barrios, Veracruz. And we think it's safe because it has been working for years and it hasn't occurred any problem, so they must be doing something right. And yes, we agree that there is a nuclear plant in our country because it gives energy to our country in a clean way. Not because it's nuclear means that it's wrong, it's just a way to get energy. Do we think that Chernobyl disaster could be prevented? Yes, because all the implosion began when the radioactive residues weren't clean, so the accumulation caused the bigger reaction that makes a little explosion. How could it have been prevented? Easy, just cleaning the residue that were left at least once a certain amount of time. Once the explosion happened, was there any way to stop the radiation spread and its pollution? No, you can't contain radiation when it's already in the environment, and it's a little bit sad because that radiation that exploded in Chernobyl reached Mexico because some of that radiation spread to the Gulf of Mexico.
Some of the environmental consequences of the Chernobyl disaster were that Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine were seriously contaminated. The Soviet authorities started evacuating people from the area around Chernobyl within 36 hours of the accident. Also, Soviet scientists reported that the Chernobyl reactor contained about 190 metric tons of uranium dioxide, fuel, and fission products. Also, and finally, reports from Soviet and Western scientists indicate that Belarus received about 60% of the contamination that fell on the former Soviet Union. Some of the environmental consequences of other nuclear disasters and the use of nuclear weapons would be massive destruction, the creation of uninhabitable areas of radiation mutation, and the danger of humans being exposed to the radiation.
Also, we research about the nuclear weapons and its consequence, and the consequences are massive destruction, make uninhabitable areas due radiation, and mutation in humans that are exposed to the radiation or even death. About this consequence, it's very scary because there is no cure for radioactive damage, also that it kills all organic matter, and also it hurts a lot the planet Earth, which is the only place that we have to live. What will be as a solution for nuclear disasters? Well, have safer security procedures in a more controlled and professional environment. We feel working as a team very pressure, but at the same time we feel very interested in the subject. It was tough and therefore we didn't like it, but it was fun making the video. It was a little bit different, but we managed to complete it. And it didn't take as much time as we thought, but on internet there are a lot of news and stories that aren't real from Chernobyl, and therefore we need to erase and delete all the false statements that were about of Chernobyl.